We're back.
Yes, we
are.
are.
So we're back. Actually, this has been funny because it's been about a month, pretty much.
Right. Yeah, well, yeah, because San Diego.
Yeah.
Because it took us 2 weeks to fucking recover.
Yeah, that was basically.
My sleep was fuck fault.
Yeah, we didn't even. Did we really talk about that? So we talked about the direct flight.
Yeah.
And, and there's actually
there's
actually something to be said about this too, where I do believe that what we do with the nutrition protocol and with not doing any caffeine.
Well, we're setting circadian rhythms.
Yeah, really like being tied into the regular 24-hour clock.
Yeah.
And doing something as unnatural as flying halfway across the world in 12 hours.
Yeah, because by the way, on the way back, I got business class.
Oh yeah, so you should have been cozy. Yeah.
So I was, and yet it took me 2 weeks to recover. Not that I was up and running by day 2. That's not the point.
Yeah.
Even by day 1, I went to train right away because usually it sets me better.
Yeah.
But my sleep was affected. You know, like those vivid dreams, like when you are in it.
Yeah.
That took 2 weeks to come back. So I felt like I was sleeping, but not my normal, like, there's a difference between sleeping through the night and good sleep, right?
Yeah.
And it took me 2 weeks to recover.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that, yes, we set the circadian rhythm with the protocol, with the no caffeine, with all that stuff, that you jump 9 hours,
I fucked it up so bad. Like all the things that you shouldn't really do for jet lag, I just couldn't do it. You know, like we get there in the evening, I kind of stayed up till, I don't know, 9, 10, slept. I had been up at that point for like 36 hours, you know. Then I get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm up until 5. And then I sleep until 1 in the afternoon. It's just completely,
so
I'm already
everything you
fucked.
can't do,
So I would say, as much as I don't know what a guy should or shouldn't be using caffeine for, I think that's one instance where if that next morning I would wake up at like 7 a.m. and have one fucking coffee just to make that, just to make that be daytime. Like, because that's the thing, I could not shift that day to night cycle.
You know what sets your circadian rhythm? Do you know that lactate is part of it?
So you do have to somewhat be moving.
Yeah, it's actually one of the major pacemaker for the body and everything is lactate. So I started to look at the circadian rhythm more precisely, and the enteric nervous system is a huge thing.
Yeah.
It's a huge pacemaker, but the lactate was one of them as well. Like food seems to have a huge impact, by the way. Food has a huge impact as well.
I basically started to feel almost acclimated about the time we turned around and came back. Like right before we had to leave. So it was 2 weeks there, 2 weeks back.
The sugar in everything over there, I'm telling you, I say that every time I go back to the US, you guys are screwed. Maybe it's just California.
I put on, I don't know, I think I just held a little bit of water weight, but I had I had some meals I wouldn't normally have.
No, but the cravings, me, is like suddenly I wanted cashews all day.
Yeah.
I was like, I need some form of carbs. Yeah. Nah, I bet you, it's not the same.
And then
maybe it's the water that has maybe the water has no minerals in it whatsoever, so that impacted me as well.
Yeah.
But no, it's not the same. And every single time I go to the US, I can tell, I'm like, my body reacts differently.
Yeah. All right, so this week, let's get started. We're going to go into, this episode is going to be basically our full, kind of the 2020 version of the StrongFit Nutrition Protocol. Where it sits now, we'll get you up to speed on everything between the last few and now.
So we're going to go over what I think are the problems with nutrition, the way it is put forward right now, and where that comes from. Mm-hmm. In order to get there, I need to talk about something first.
Yes.
Because I am so fucking irate at that one. So Dr. Jordan Peterson is in trouble right now. Mm-hmm. And it's not that, it's the way people that don't like him in the press have portrayed what happened to him.
Yeah.
So for the ones who don't know, Dr. Peterson got some major adverse reaction to something called benzodiazepine. It's a drug that you use for depression.
Essentially, it used to be referred to as what a tranquilizer is, technically.
Right, yeah. So they were used for, it's one step short of Thorazine, it's used for major depression, right? And stuff like that. So what happened is, the way it's portrayed is like he has a problem with addiction. He's addicted to benzos, even though no one knows what benzos are. And they're talking about anti-anxiety pills or whatever. First of all, no, because that makes it sound like he's, taking some street drug and he has a history of addiction.
There was actually a weird classification of it because I think depending on who you are, you will either read addicted to benzos as, what is it, just Prozac? You know what I mean? Or if you don't know anything, you're just going to think. Because if you think regular drug, if you're a person who knows of street drugs, benzos aren't really that. And if you're a person who doesn't know street drugs, everything with a code word is street drugs.
Is a street drug, exactly. So, but they're making it sound like he has an addiction problem. And that's the issue. And then, so he basically, and so the first time they relayed that was like, oh, he went into rehab. I was like, but then without saying what he went to rehab for, what happened and everything, which I found extremely disingenuous. Yeah. So for people who don't know, because what bothers me is that's the world we live in right now. Because people don't like him, he's a very polarizing figure. Why, I don't understand, because what he says is such a common sense approach to, he is a doctor in psychology and everything. He has clinical experience and everything. So you might not like the fact that he believes in God and he's more on the conservative side, which is not my side at all.
Which is also really, that is an interesting thing, right? Is that in this situation, you and I have had, for the hundreds of times, I know that you are not a far right-wing guy.
I'm a liberal, if anything. I'm not a progressive, but I'm a liberal all the way.
Exactly, and that you certainly aren't an overly religious person.
I'm an atheist, so I'm the opposite.
I use those soft terms.
Yes, no, I don't.
Certainly not overly religious.
Yes, exactly. Right, so no, I'm on the opposite spectrum of him. He's all about monogamous from the beginning and find a woman for life, and that's.
But I think somebody's intent matters, and I think that's where you see common sense. He always seemed to have.
Plus he's on target on most of the stuff. By the way, what he's referring to when he talks is the studies that he's assimilated, the work that he's done as, again, a clinical psychologist, all the people he's treated. He coaches women to barter better in the professional world. He has many, many women that he coaches into, like when they have to start fighting for a raise. So he's teaching them to negotiate better. How is that anti-feminist? I mean, he's trying to get some fucking lost kids on the alt-right to come back toward a better life and everything. And he's one of the few actually talking to those kids who need to be talked to. Because, I find the hatred toward that guy comes from people who have not read what he actually said. Yes, he refused to use pronouns for transgender people. But by the way, he said many times that if he were to talk to someone, he would use whatever pronoun that you want. But he won't do it by law. He refuses for that to be said by law, which I agree as well. I agree completely.
I purposely break lots of laws.
But plus, I'm not saying like the 73 pronouns.
Exactly.
We're not doing this by law. That's for sure. Anyway, so what people if you read the stuff, he has a problem with addiction. He went to rehab for it. I was like, you motherfuckers. What happened was, he's a stressed individual. I can only imagine the stuff he goes through, being attacked the way he is and all the stuff. Right. So his wife was diagnosed with terminal cancer. 6 months ago? 8 months ago?
I think so,
something like that. 6 to 8 months ago. She basically, at the time, she has 6 months to live. So, which by the way, she pulled it through. She's still alive. But at the time, she has 6 months to live. Right. He didn't take it well. Right. He's a huge family guy who did not take well the fact that his wife had 6 months to live. Right. What a pussy. Really. Right. So he goes on high dosage of benzodiazepine. Right. He crashes down. Depression is very bad. He's a stressed individual. Depression gets bad. So he goes on benzodiazepines. On benzos, I forgot the name of the actual drug. And he gets what they call a paradoxical reaction, which means he gets the opposite effect. Anxiety shows up. Depression is even worse. But it took months, right? And so what they're trying to do at that time is to add more drugs. Because that's how you fix it in the West, right? They add more drugs to try to make him, and the whole thing just collapses him. So he decides to get off drugs, off all those drugs. He realized physically he can't do it. No shit, right? And so he first enters a rehab clinic so that he can detox physically from drugs that are antidepressants. Antidepressants fucked him up. Can we say it like that? And he got antidepressants to that dosage because his wife was diagnosed with terminal cancer. with anybody else, people would be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. What pisses me off the most is the people that are blasting him right now, the same people that go, we should talk about depression. Like suicide is not something to be joked about. And the dude is basically full depressed and everything, gets a major adverse reaction to some prescribed drugs by a doctor for depression, gets fucked up on that. And that's how they're making it sound, like he's in rehab for addiction.
Yeah.
Yes, he's addicted to benzos, but not in that sense.
Yeah, it's kind of a different thing. And it's also that like, it's similar in like with the opioid crisis, is that you're not actually seeing a lot of people dying of OxyContin overdoses. You know, like the terminal thing at the end is, well, you've taken all of these pharmaceutical drugs to a certain point, and then you kind of have to take the leap into the recreational street drugs, and then you get involved with fentanyl, which, hate to break it to you, nobody's getting fucking fentanyl prescribed to them. That's not exactly all that rare. Nobody's dying from a doctor's prescribed fentanyl prescription. But so it is interesting to see this thing being packed. Yes, I don't know if his was actually prescribed though. I think his was a mess of lots of other things. If there was fentanyl, I don't know that. I think that was
there was some fentanyl
a bonus, if you will. You know what I mean? But I think it is very interesting to see this not being taken as what it is, which is a mental health issue that has been exacerbated by pharmacological intervention. That's all.
That's all. So how are we not presenting it like this? Instead of making it sound like the dude is an addict on street drugs that had to go to rehab, like he's a fucking pro athlete.
Yeah.
Well, and just because they don't like him.
And also that's the thing, there's a lot of people that don't like him. If any person that they know were gonna put their foot down and get something in order and make a decision to go to rehab, they'd be like, yes, good for you.
Yeah, if he was a woman, a walk and everything, man. Yeah. And by the way, how come no one is attacking the drug industry on how? Have you ever heard that antidepressants can have basically such an effect even on a physical level? Forget mental. On a physical level, it can actually give you symptoms of withdrawal. I think people should know that before they go on antidepressant. The antidepressants are, to me, one of the worst things we could come up with.
Anything that's going to affect serotonin, dopamine like that, I think is going to be a huge issue. Just trying to become normal.
But then
meaning if you do remove that, so much of that is patterning.
Yeah, but on top of that, you have physical withdrawal issues that are not just even serotonin and dopamine. The drug itself fucks you up on the physical level. So, like, is that what you take a drug for? So, which means you're depressed, and then you have that stuff, and on top of it, there are paradoxical effects that they don't tell you about. The fact that in that whole story, Peterson is a villain. Same fucking woke people. Yeah. This is the stuff, like, and I'm a liberal. This is the shit that is gonna get Trump elected. I kid you not.
It's gonna happen, guys.
Trump is gonna get elected. It's not possible. Like, the fucking progressive left is killing me. Anyway, but what does it matter? Because on top of me feeling bad for the guy, there's context matters. Yes. So what do I mean by that? There's entire conversations about nutrition right now that are done in a context that I believe people don't see clearly. So what do I mean by that? For example, first approach to it. That idea that, for example, let's take carbs. Carbs will give you energy, of protein will build muscle. When you say it like that in such a simple way, which is mostly what they say in order to sell you the stuff, is what they are saying is that you are a victim of circumstances. If you look, that's the approach. It's a victim mentality. Yeah. I don't have energy, I take carbs. That's what they're selling you out there. They are basically selling you a victim mentality in that sense. Do you think like your body is not producing energy until he has carbs? You're a victim of circumstances. I don't build muscle because I don't train hard enough, because I don't sleep well, because I don't have the proper connection when I didn't. No, it's because I don't have enough protein.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Right. So it's not me, it's the world around me that is not fitting my needs. And so all I got to do is change the world and I will be a better person.
Plus it's easier to just put more of one thing into your body than it is to do better work.
Right.
And maybe hurt a little more in your burn a little more in your training. And there's just...
Or, you want muscle? Yeah, train a bit better, train a bit harder, train a bit you know what I mean? But that's my biggest problem is they are basically selling what I see as a victimhood mentality, where they're saying like, oh yeah, you don't have energy because you don't have carbs. No. So your body produces all the carbs, all the energy that you need, right? It's already there. The reason you can't tap into it is because you're in freeze or flight. Flight actually gives you energy. So it's because you're in freeze and everything. The real issue is not the amount of carbs that you eat. It's you are incapable of tapping into the energy that is already there. Or your system is so messed up that you cannot, at some point, which can happen, you cannot produce the energy that is being ingested and produced is not being used outside of, for example, what do I mean by that? Morbidly obese people, anything that they eat, because of a fucked up system and the problem with that they have with insulin resistant and everything, all that energy, those calories go straight to fat, which means the energy never get to the brain, never get to places where it, which is why they need to eat more and more and more. So there's a moment where your system is so fucked up that the energy being produced is only being put toward the wrong action, in that case, building fat. But in any case, more carbs, for example, in the case of a person who's morbidly obese, will not result to more energy. It'll just result to more fat.
Yeah.
Which is what you see
a lot of time. Which also, too, that is part of the issue is that fat is potential energy. It is stored kind of for that reason, if you will. But
exactly, right. Yeah, and on top of it, it's because the body is so fucked up, the only thing it can do now is generate too fat. But no matter what, no matter how you look at it, the point is, no matter what you ingest or whatever, that energy that you ingest, it has to be used. So that's not the energy we're talking about. Yeah, fat can be energy in that sense. Yeah. But it's useless if you don't use it. So a lot of the conversation with nutrition and a lot of the questions that we have is always comes back down to that conversation about, well, if I just add this happens. I'm like, no, you are not a victim of your circumstances. You are not a passive, victim of the world around you. Changing the world won't necessarily change who you are. It goes the other way around. Yeah. And this is all the work. So we're going to do a lot of the podcast about the brain networks and stuff like that to explain all this. But fundamentally, I think it's very important to understand that it's you first.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of where we want to kind of break into this at then.
Well, let's talk about nutrition. So pure nutrition. But first, we have to explain what is it about, right? Because first of all, if you don't digest properly, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Right. So should nutrition being about digesting the food properly? That should be one of the constraints. If you have more protein but you can't digest it,
then you're just doing a lot of extra damage.
Right, extra damage. So you're going to damage the organs from the consumption of energy. Mm-hmm. You're going to have undigested protein in your colon, which kills the good gut flora. So there's a number of things that's going to happen if you just up the protein, but you're not able to digest it.
Yeah.
Right, so that's because people use, we're going to into that, but they're going to use, they use that idea that food is fuel like it's a car. Mm-hmm. Right, but it's not that simple. For example, carbs are not gasoline. They're petroleum that you get off the ground. You know what I mean? The crude oil.
Gotcha.
That's what it is. Like actually, carbs are crude oil. They're not gasoline. There's an entire process that has to happen for it to be able to be used.
For it to be a clean fuel.
So that's why. So I want to go into that for people to understand how the body works. Because I think if you don't understand how the body works, you are more susceptible to being sold food as making you a victim of circumstances.
As a cause and effect.
Right, and where it's actually not true. So I think digestion should be part of it. Mm-hmm. Understanding what we mean by fuel, because that's not true either, that's an oversimplification. And things like hormonal levels, sleep, all that stuff, I believe, should be integrated into how we look at nutrition. Like Richard was talking to some very high-level nutritionists in the famous system out there, and they're talking to him because they all have panic attacks. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, but don't you find it weird? It's like, oh no, it's just hormonal levels. But I'm like, but that
should be related to how you're eating, training, and living.
Right, but so nutrition is a part of that as well. For example, like you go on the plant nutrition and say, hey, I can see my abs. Yeah, and you lost your periods if you're a woman and you lost your periods. Or if you're a man, your hormonal levels are all over the place. Is it working then? And then that idea that, yeah, but I can see my abs. But it's like, can we get both? Like, isn't that, you know what I mean? It's that weird thing. It's like, because again, like, the reason I'm fat is because all that food. I'm like, again, you thinking the outside world is making you into something. I don't like that. Because that's not the way it is.
But they seek that diagnosis. There's a lot of that. It's I have a thyroid problem. I have this.
Okay, so back to victim mentality.
I am this. I
am a product of my environment.
Yeah.
Right, so they use thyroid like it's not part of themselves.
Yeah.
It's my thyroid doing that. Your thyroid is part of you. Right? And the thyroid does a lot more than that shit, by the way. So, you know what I mean? But it's that victim mentality where it's like, well, it's not me, just, then after that they go to, it's not me, it's my body. I'm naturally fat. I have big bone.
Yeah.
I have
my parents look like this.
Yes, exactly. Well, you know, the world is a mean place. So you're always a victim of circumstances, right? And that bothers me because I believe if this is a society we're in, right, where there's a lot of victimhood mentality, but then you won't be able to have the results you want to do, because the only way you're going to get the results you want to have is by combining everything together. Understanding that it's not just nutrition, it's nutrition and training and your lifestyle. Everything is a unit. The body works as a unit, and a lot of it is based on you, not the other shit. So you can have perfect diet on paper and have fucked up hormonal levels, not sleep at night and everything. And what you think is going to lead a year from now, you're going to crash so bad. You know what I mean? And that's a little bit my problem with the calorie in versus calorie out. Is like there's I don't know if we can say that online, but Richard was telling me from Little Tyler.
Yeah.
Like that they have access to I can't say the name because I don't want to put Tyler in trouble, but they have access to the numbers of a huge franchise type in the fitness industry, right? That has been looking at weight loss within their people, over 5,000 people. And they realize that it's in the 90% people have lost weight, but gained fat.
Yeah.
So they've actually, all the weight loss, it was muscle. They've gained fat. Right, but technically they're true, they all lost weight.
Yeah.
Right, is that what you all want? Do you want to increase your body fat percentage while losing muscle? But technically it's weight loss.
Yeah, you'll look worse. You'll just be smaller.
But technically, exactly, right.
Yeah.
It's weight loss. So
there was basically a medical, like the huge Sanford Hospital in South Dakota, which is like the hospital that goes across the whole state. They started, and I hope these people are watching, what I can describe as only the most fucking atrocious and disgusting weight loss thing that I've ever seen. They have hired just people off the streets that are maybe not even really qualified to be gym trainers, some of them, as the nutritional consultants. And they bring you in, and the plan, it is essentially low carb, but extreme. It's almost like medical weight loss, as in like if you weighed 700 pounds, I needed you to get you to 4 this year or you're gonna die. But they do that for just average motherfuckers come walking in off the street. So you'll get like, I had clients who would end up there because it's the fucking hospital.
Yeah,
they're like, they're doing a weight loss thing, it's a health thing. And the entire thing gets better. The entire thing is built around, basically you can eat like, it's almost nothing. Like a person got to eat like a 4-ounce piece of chicken one day and some vegetables. Then what you get to have during the rest of the day is the Sanford profile. It's a fucking hospital that is selling their own fucking stupid protein shit. They're doing meal replacement shakes and shit. And it is fucking unbelievable. People will walk in, doctor, okay, perfect. And they do the thing, and it is nasty. I mean, people just starve, or people lose a bunch of weight, get metabolically just destroyed because they'll eat. There was a person there who said, yeah, I'm gonna get to start training a little bit more. They're gonna have me up my exercise, so I get to start eating like I think she was gonna get up to like 1,100 calories. And I'm like, and I had one client who she had actually got hired there as a consultant for them. you know, as one of the people dealing with the things, because they get thousands of people through here, and they just fuck them all up. Yeah. And because it's a hospital, I think you can still run it under your health insurance and shit too. Oh. So it's this whole fucking thing. Scam. So Sanford Hospital, someone should call them out for that stuff, because fuck them, that's some bullshit.
Yeah.
It's fucking
And by the way, a year later, you'll
also I have stories of people in their wellness centers, so they'll have their trainers, their physical therapists in their wellness center just working with people, and the people that are on their nutrition stuff were like collapsing on treadmills and having to have ambulances called to their fucking wellness center in Sioux Falls because they were like completely undernourished and couldn't even walk. It's like, what the fuck is the point?
It's a major freeze mode where they completely crash. Yeah. So, but that's not as bad. But in a way, I think in the industry we are, in order to sell, it's easier to sell to people that fell prey to the victimhood mentality. And I think, because you see that...
You just want a solution. So many things are like that, right? Like if this light goes out wrong, you need to replace it. What are you going to do? You're going to call an electrician. Right. It's broke, come fix it. And it just doesn't work that way.
But it's not with your body. And we see that with steroids, where people are like, oh yeah, like take steroids. So now they're like, the pros, take steroids or whatever. I actually happened to had access to what Kai Green takes. Fuck me, does it take? It takes very little.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy. Like that's so weird, because with the way you would think, like I bet you the average dude at the gym is taking more than take the insulin out, but takes more than Kai Green. Like there was a dude talking about trend, saying like, because he knows, because he's the one selling it, but he's saying like you'd be surprised to see that most of the people on trend are the guys that look like shit at the gym, that look like he's not training.
Yeah.
But that's I think people. Like we all love to talk about this so we can blame others, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's very important that people realize the context we are in within the fitness industry. And when it comes to nutrition, the easiest way to do all this is to do like the hospital is doing, is to put fancy names and people with a lot of initials after their name, and they're selling you what is basically a macro plan that is a generalistic even thing, oversimplified for everybody. But at the end, I think like a good way to know if your nutrition plan is working is not your six-pack, or not just your six-pack, but also, are you sleeping at night? Do you have clear signals? Is your digestion improving? You know, things like this. And if your nutrition is getting, by the way, if your sleep is getting better, your digestion is improving, your signals are clearer, trust me, you'll do better.
Yeah.
Which means you'll train harder, you'll get to your six-pack, but that way, not the other way around, which means we're going to get you a six-pack faster, but at the expense of hormonal levels, panic attacks, you not sleeping well, and all that stuff. So I think this is where I want to keep, I'm going to talk about that every single time we talk about nutrition, because we have to put that conversation in the right context. Like the context right now with nutrition is wrong. It's just selling you shit by saying like it's not your fault.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. They do though. I see a lot just in marketing and sales. If you do it just across the board, you're just going to see there was a problem. We offer a solution. You know, exactly. It's just, and I think as the consumer, or at least as a person, independently of that system, who wants to learn and do better for yourself, you got to detach from that thing right fucking now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
going for the shiny athlete.
Yeah. And if you're coaching though, it's hard. It's hard offering nutrition advice to people who want that solution.
Because they don't want to hear. But it's okay. So let's go at the nutrition, StrongFit Nutrition Protocol. So first, since we talked about context and everything, let's talk about...
We're wearing the same jeans.
Oh, fuck, we did.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and then we have both black t-shirts. I just realized. And he wants a tattoo on his head, so it's his fault. He's trying to copy me.
My wife wants the tattoo on my head.
It would look dope.
I think it's pretty dope too.
I have the person.
We'll have to switch sides of the...
Well, no, because I'm getting a tattoo on both sides anyway.
Oh, okay.
Because now I'll have this.
Okay.
So, no.
I only have one good side.
Yeah, so we'll switch sides no matter what. I'm getting a tattoo on that side. Anyway, right, so let's go with stuff that is talked about all the time, which is carbs.
Yeah.
Right, and people are like, carb is energy, carb is fuel. All right, so let's talk about that. What do they mean by that? Because carbs turn into glucose, glucose is fuel. No, it's not that simple. So first of all, let's go with that. It's not as simple as glucose is fuel. So first of all, carb is a form of glucose. you need glucose in your body, therefore, shit, it doesn't work like that. Carbs outside of the body is not carb inside the body.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. So yes, you do need glucose inside the body. Glucose will help toward a number of things. But you have to understand, most of the time, glucose, if we're going to use the fuel thing, glucose is crude oil, not gasoline, not diesel, not kerosene based on what you need. It's just crude oil. From there, it's going to have to be transformed in something that is useful. So, because they say glucose is energy, it's not that simple. For example, let's say for training, right? The main fuel for your muscle, for your brain, for your heart, when you move around, is lactate, not glucose. Yes, lactate needs the base of glucose in order for lactate to be produced, but that doesn't mean that the glucose is the source of energy. So glucose, again, is a crude oil that needs to be processed into a form of energy usable by the muscle, by the brain, by the heart, and everything. So introducing more crude oil does not mean the car is doing better or going faster.
Yeah.
You know what makes the car go faster or better? To have a better processing of the crude oil.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what they're doing right now by talking about, you know, like having glycogen and all that stuff is like, yeah, so you're making the tank for the crude oil bigger. So by the way, they're selling you that shit because if you say more glycogen in a muscle look rounder. So people are happy. Hey, I'm doing better. Yes, but performance-wise, that doesn't mean necessarily shit because who's saying that you're actually using that glucose or that glycogen correctly for performance? One is not the same. Again, you are getting tanks of crude oils bigger by having more glucose in your system. Right, but that doesn't mean that tank is connected to the motor, by the way.
Yeah.
You might just be putting a spare tank in the back, which is usually around your waist.
Yeah.
Right? So you have a spare tank in the back. Who cares? By the way, but that's not what makes the car go better. What makes the car go better, again, is processing of that crude oil into kerosene if you're a fucking plane or diesel if you're a truck.
More efficient way to burn the fuel. Yeah.
That is what performance is.
Because I think people do get hung up on carbohydrates as like something beyond just the substrate for those other processes.
But by the way, it's not even carbohydrate is not even the substrate for glucose in the body because there are other ways to get glucose than carbs. So people are like, when I talk about gluconeogenesis, they're like, well, protein. I'm like, gluconeogenesis is not just turning protein into glucose. It also turns fat into glucose. It turns lactate back into amino acids. There's a number of things. The body is not that fucking simplistic machine where you just shove gasoline and it goes fast.
I had somebody ask me one time because they said, like, similar to this, they said, well, what was it? I was drinking like almond milk, right? Just a glass of almond milk, no health reason. I think it was actually probably the kind with a lot of sugar in it too, but it was just because it tastes good. And a friend of mine was like, he said, well, geez, where do you get your calcium from? And I'm like, you eat fucking like snack cakes out of your freezer at night. You're asking me about where I'm getting enough calcium. What the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
And I see that a lot with some of these things where it's like a lot of people are, walking over $100 bill to pick up $1 off the ground.
So they do that. Yes. Well, we're going to go into that with sleep and all that stuff, right? But so first of all, because carb seems to be a major issue in the conversation, is understanding that. So carb is crude is not even, it's one of the ways to get crude oil. It's not even crude oil itself, because crude oil is glucose in the body. Right. To get glucose in the body, there are actually many ways to do this. And through gluconeogenesis, you can actually get it from protein, but that's a very inefficient system. But you can get it from fat as energy, because they go like ketones is, yes, that's fuel for the brain. But actually, again, going back to lactate being the main fuel for the brain and everything. So reuptake of the lactate. My point is the whole system is incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And the problem with nutrition is a lot of that stuff we're still trying to figure out, because we have suffered for hundreds and hundreds of years of an oversimplification of what the body is. And now we're starting to understand, since actually because of quantum mechanics, we're starting to understand that the whole thing is actually far more complicated than it is. So the problem is it was a human failure. Like after Newton came about and with his deterministic laws, he gave us an idea that everything is super simple, A causes B, done. And that was a way that science fought religion, by the way. And as science started to win, he started to introduce that idea that everything is not complex, is not spiritual, which I understand in that sense, where it's not God, there is a basic reason why it's happening. So, except that has been taken into a religious fervor.
Yeah.
The other way, where nothing can be complex. Like people don't know because they don't study that shit, but before quantum mechanics went about, so let's say around 1910, we thought physics was pretty close to set. Like we knew shit.
Yeah.
And of course, Einstein comes about and fucking kneecaps everybody on that one. But at the time, we thought we knew everything. And that's a little bit, that's a flaw of science because it's done by humans that have been trying to push all that stuff toward, there is a simplistic reason for everything.
Yeah.
All you got to do is narrow it down. And so now they narrow down carbs and energy. And really, it's not the case. Energy, you need the fuel, again, for energy, especially when you train in movement, is lactate. So what matters is that you are more efficient at producing lactate and at using lactate as fuel. That's what matters to you, right? So after that, yes, you do need a source of crude oil in order to produce the lactate. And that's where glucose comes in. So of course you need glucose. I'm not denying that. But what matters the most is what you do with the glucose, which means how do you turn it into lactate and can you use lactate as energy? So focusing on just getting glucose in the body is actually an oversimplifying explanation of a very complex problem.
It's kind of the nutritional equivalent of a bad gym just trying to get 200 new members in real quick.
Yeah.
Really. It's like, man, I think you should be checking some other boxes.
Of doing Groupons.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, imagine if you're a gym and go like, well, I'm going to go a free membership that will have more people in.
Yeah.
Right, and that will solve what? So now you have more members, less space, more pissed off people who are not paying. How is that? It's those things like, yeah, but there's people through the door. I'm like, but who cares?
Yeah. So with carbs though now, this has changed still for you.
Right.
A little bit, right?
Yeah. So, okay. So are there good parts about carbs or stuff like that we can talk about? Yes. Okay. So let's go back to the protocol. What was the idea of the protocol? Is that you have to have the fuel for what's coming instead of for what happened. Right. So if you look at it, and then we'll go into this through the networks and the brain networks. But the idea is you have circadian rhythms. That should be part of the protocol as well. Understanding that all cells on Earth have a circadian rhythm that is based on, light first, food second, behavior third, and actually lactate as well. Anyway, lactate is actually a major pacemaker for the circadian rhythms. Anyway, so light first. So during the day, you're going to be more active. At night, less active. I think we can go that far, right? All right. So that means what? That means the day you're going to go more toward a fuel that goes toward sympathetic action, all that stuff, right? Action type.
Yeah.
That goes all the way to the brain, by the way. Those are called the attention networks. We'll do a podcast about this, right? And at night, you're going to go more toward parasympathetic, chill, relax, so that you can go to bed and build stuff. So that means that during the day, you need to have a fuel for what's coming, for the actions coming up. And at night, you're going to get the protein so you can crash yourself, sleep well, and rebuild everything. So far, fairly simple idea. So that means that two sources of fuel that we have, carbs and fat. So that means during the day should be carbs and fat for the daytime, and at night should be protein. Right. So can I have protein during the day? Do we go there first or we go one by one?
That's a quick one. Can we go protein during the day?
Okay, yeah, right.
Not really.
So why do we say no protein during the day? Because protein are actually require a lot of energy to digest. Yeah. We know that through thermodynamics stuff and everything. It's hard to digest. Let me oversimplify it a bit. Proteins are very hard to digest. To digest protein, you need a strong digestive drive.
Yeah.
So we know that that digestive drive happens in a parasympathetic state. We know that when you're in a sympathetic state, it actually inhibits your capacity to digest. It's a simple self-defense mechanism because when the bear is coming, I can't have any energy.
Blood resources.
Right, and that's why you puke one way or the other, right, up or down. Yeah. You'll eject the food so that you have more energy toward fighting the bear that's coming.
Yeah. It's like if you ever go to like a street race or a marathon before. My parents used to put on a lot of cross-country events and shit, and so you would see there's a lot of lines for the toilets, and you definitely are bringing a lot of toilet paper if you're going to put on one of those events.
Right.
So.
Yeah. You know why? Because they ate too much, and the body knows he needs energy because they're nervous, and then
there's always a guy who will puke before sporting events or puke before a wrestling match.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. It's the body just is like no, because that's a great sympathetic. Reaction. So that's why during the day, if you were to have protein, you would so two things. Either you require your body to be in a parasympathetic state to digest the protein, which is we don't want that during the day.
Because you're going to be taking away those resources from at night, essentially, right?
On one side, and on top of it, you are promoting brain networks that are not to be used at that moment, right? Yeah. So you'll fall back toward the default network, which is you'll go so. And on top of it, as you said, at night you'll have less capacity to trigger the parasympathetic response at the proper time. Yeah. So by having protein during the day, you're going to put yourself in the wrong state, right? Or you eat the protein, you're in sympathetic state, so you don't digest it. But then it taxes your organs, and again, you have undigested protein that falls all the way to your colon, and that is actually extremely harmful to the good gut flora. So that fucks up on many levels.
And I think that's the main thing too. So if you're going to eat any protein during the day at all, most likely it's going to be digested more poorly than it would be at night.
No matter what.
Or it's going to cost you something from a recovery standpoint from later on.
It'll be both. No matter what, you will not digest as well during the day as at night.
And if you're going to have protein and have to do anything physically, it's probably also going to be a little bit in your way.
Right. So it's going to fuck up whatever you're going to do physically, and on top of it, you're going to fuck up your digestive system and your gut flora, which is a seat of behavior, which is very important. Yeah. Simple question.
That's how you can spin totally out of control.
Right, exactly. You're going to train really hard. Are you eating a steak 30 minutes before?
No.
No one in their right mind will go like, yeah, I feel like doing that. It doesn't work like that, right? And so because of circadian rhythm, that means that protein should be kept at night.
Yeah.
So can you have enough protein then? If you up the digestion, if I give you a better digestion, I can keep the amount of food that you eat the same and give you more protein out of it.
Yeah.
It's a simple equation. You don't need more food. You need to digest it better. You need to assimilate better. You don't need to read more books. You need to fucking understand what you're reading in the first place.
Yeah. And the consequences of those same things go along with if you were to in the evening, also if you're going to have carbs with your protein, you're also going to, because you're going to have still poor digestion, wrong state.
So let's talk about
carbs.
This. Yeah. Why not also carbs and protein? First of all, carbs drive a sympathetic state. I've put, I don't know how many papers out there. People still ask me about it. I've put so many papers out there.
Before we move on, my understanding of that too, right, is if a person is eating a mix of carbohydrates and protein, right, isn't generally the uptake of the carbohydrates and the effect on the sympathetic nervous system going to be faster. It's going to always have priority because that's going to be for survival, right?
Right. So it goes down to a very. So I'm going to answer exactly that because it goes to a fundamental misunderstanding of the body. That victim mentality that I was talking about is the idea that you eat, stuff happens.
Yeah.
And that's not true. So let me go into this because that's a very important idea. Like the idea is you have food, and based on that food, it goes into the chemical reaction happens, and then the body reacts. And actually, it's not what it is. The second you put food in your mouth, your body is making a prediction as to what you're eating is already changing the entire system based on that. So that means that you produce insulin not because you had carbs, but because this decided you produce insulin. You have control of all function of your body. So people are like, no. You get an insulin spike because you had carbs. Actually, that's not true. You get the insulin. Sometimes you get the insulin before you have actually processed the carbs. Yeah. How weird is that? So people never talk about this, but there's a name.
That's based usually on an external input like sweetness or...
I'll explain. Yeah. It's called the cephalic phase insulin response. There's a name for it, right? Cephalic phase insulin response. Google it, you'll find it everywhere, and it's a known fact that no one wants to talk about. Where I have food in based on sight, taste, and smell. That's it. Yeah. So not based on processing the food, nothing of that. So in the first 2 minutes of chewing food based on, by the way, the sight of the food alone will determine, so it can be just sight, just taste, just smell, combination of any, right? Yeah. You produce insulin already. Why? Because your body is trying to determine how much the level of blood glucose needs to be after the meal. So that means that if you have a very high CPR, so cephalic phase insulin response, it will lower your blood sugar after the meal. Whereas if you have a low CIPR response, it will up the blood sugar levels after the meal. Because he's predicting what you're eating. Yeah. Because that's how the body works. We go back to active inference that I talked about and all that shit.
It can't just wait until that point because it's going to be too late.
It doesn't wait. This is, guys, remember like Schrödinger, like, you know, diminishing surprises, Carl Friston, diminishing entropy, Schrödinger. That's what the body does. Yeah. And it's
kind I think we're getting closer and closer to the point where I think that's like the purpose of it.
It is the purpose of it. I've been trying to say that shit for how long now? Yeah. Like 2 years? Yeah. It is the purpose, and it's been proven even in nutrition. All I'm doing right now is cognitive neuroscience, and that's all we talk about is the free energy principle from Carl Friston, which goes back to Schrödinger and everything. This is how it works. The body makes a prediction to learn what happened, to get better at it. There is no such thing as eating and shit happens. Yeah. That is a victimhood mentality of you're just a victim of circumstances where actually it's the other way around. It's how you attack what happens to you is what decides what happens.
I thought
it's a Bayesian inference.
Put stuff in and you're just a big compost heap and it comes out when it's done. And
exactly,
you know.
And that's not true at all. It's a Bayesian inference, which is hypothesis versus observation. So you have food coming, I'm making a hypothesis. That's the cephalic phase insulin response. So it's like, that's sweet food. This carbs, this glucose.
It's immediately going to take, if I'm eating protein or something else and I have something that's sweet, it's just not going to matter. It's going to be
your body's
poor digestion of
so
the
by
protein.
the way, that refers to low sugar thing, like the, what do you call that, that makes it sweet? Sweeteners.
Sweeteners, yeah.
Sweeteners. That fucks you up, because how does that work? Cephalic phase, so please, CPIR, okay? Even though it's hard to say in French, but CPIR. Anyway.
We'll call it CPR.
Let's call it CPR, yeah. Let's call it CIR. No, that's even worse in French accent. CPR. I like
CPR. They're never going to wonder exactly. If we're talking about
right.
that thing.
No, exactly. Right, so you eat cake and everything, there's sugar on it, it's sweet. Bloom, I know there's that. I need to lower the blood sugar after because I'm introduced so much glucose into my body. So I'm going to lower the blood sugar levels so that I can deal with the amount of sugar coming in. Yeah. Right? Okay. So you do this. Every time it's sweet, I know what's coming. CPR does that. It's fine. Now you get a sweetener. Sweetener is like, hey, sweet. Therefore, boom, blood sugar goes down. But there's no sugar coming in. So now you have a problem. Yeah, you have a massive low blood sugar issue happening.
Which is going to then create issues with your things like food cravings, your mood, all of that stuff too.
Now it fucks up with the prediction.
Exactly.
So what happens after a while? The body is like, okay, so sweet does not mean sugar is coming.
So no.
Right, so now you have cake with sugar in it and the body is like, no sugar. So blood sugar goes up and now you introduce sugar. Yeah. And now you have a ridiculous high amount of blood sugar. Yeah.
So you can start to have these weird little like crashes of essentially low blood sugar without consequence, which is going to lead to crazy cravings.
Because your prediction goes all over the fucking place. And that's why
you're going to show up totally ill-equipped and just get wound up by
And so you have two
carbs.
choices. You're going to have the weirdest cravings or you're going to get morbidly obese.
Yeah. Yeah, and either way, it's too chaotic of an environment to do anything
consistent. That's exactly what the body doesn't like. What the body thrives, again, we're going to make podcasts about this, is calm, ordered inside, chaotic outside. This is how you thrive. So people that are chaotic inside, you will see, try to control their environment. Because calm has to come from somewhere, but calm has to come from inside, not outside. And that's the fucking reversal that is killing everybody. Yeah. And so that idea that you just absorb and shit happens that's fucking 1800s. That's the flaw of where Western science took us as a fight against the church. Mm-hmm. Like, I know it's a weird way to look at it, but that's literally how it went. So going back to nutrition. So that means that you can't have protein during the day because you will end up in the wrong state. Yeah. You can't digest it properly and it's going to fuck up your actions. But it's not just your actions, because remember, everything is a prediction first. That means that you have brain networks that require you to be in a specific phase toward the sympathetic mode. And that's why you don't want to be in parasympathetic, and that's why you can't digest, and that's why you don't want protein during the day. So protein at night. Yeah. During the day, that means carbs and fats. where are the places for that? So we have two networks during the day, which one is the salience network, which is figuring out patterns, and one which is the executive network, which is go, 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 go. So you can imagine a go, 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 go is carbs.
Yeah.
So when do I need that? I need that when I'm going to go executive network, for example, training, where I need to just lose my shit, go, like, for example, burn the questions. Yeah. So carbs could help you fuel that, right? The rest of the time, where you're not going go-go, which means you need the salience network, which is figuring shit out, patterns, work, dealing with people, that stuff, is going to be more fat fuel. So that means that fat during the day, carbs when you train, protein at night. That is the basic of the StrongFit protocol.
Yeah. It's, having come from a place where I always ate so much protein all the time anyways. I always just was. And then when I started training to get bigger and such, it was protein more. And carbs. It was just more of both and cleaner versions and all that stuff. But I used to have this policy. Like sometimes I'd cook meat. I would just go on my grill and I would slab it just full of meat. And what would I say? I was like, side dishes are for poor people. I think that's what I would say. Just be sitting there just eating a steak with another steak, and off you can go. But now eating so much less meat overall because I've split that. Here's what I've noticed is, when I was 325 pounds, I had more overall body fat than I do now, for sure. However, my abs were not much less defined. They were less defined, but less defined than they are now at 285. Yeah. So what I find that interesting is I was noticing that when I was losing fat from switching this, I wasn't losing this little fat under my skin. Right. My abs didn't look any different. The difference is my abs look almost the same, but my trunk size, like my waist is down 6 inches from a couple years ago. Right. And all of that really is just this organ. Like I can tell it's just digestive.
Pushed forward. And by the way, that fucks up your breathing.
Yes, my breathing has always been a problem, diaphragm breathing. I think I've just had a lot of
visceral
fat,
which is linked to the biggest issues health-wise and stuff like that. Yeah. So but by the way, that goes down also to genetics. Like for example, some people are lean naturally. Like my ex-wife, she won it for 3 days. She had a fucking six-pack. I'm not one of those, right? Yeah. But it's so. You will always carry a natural body fat percentage that might be higher than another person.
Yeah. And where that is, and
there's the truth that. But that being said, being too fat will result, for example, in visceral fats and things like that. So the markers are not always the same. That's why I don't like when people do a diet to get a six-pack, because you might have to sacrifice a lot of things that are your health in order to get there.
This is what was funny. So I realized then too, because of all that visceral fat, I really thought even when I was like because I probably still had abs, kind of. I had big man abs at 340 pounds, And so, but when I start losing that, you don't see it. And you're like, fuck. Yeah. I thought I'm 20 pounds away from being jacked. Yeah. And then I lose 20, and then I lose another 20. And now I'm down almost another 20, and we're like, fuck.
Yeah, but okay, but look at pictures of you then
for sure. But that amount of if you're just looking to see, I'm only looking at C, I'm like, fuck.
You would look like, what's his name, the English.
But for me, I do also want to be big and jacked and have some sort of level of health.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, well, let's just say I look as lean as I did before, but I am 50 or 60 pounds heavier. It's a lot less work on my heart.
That's right. Yeah.
So for me, we'll just kind of keep going into it, but. The amount of protein I used to eat was obscene, and the amount of protein I eat now is way, way, way less than people would think.
Yeah, especially at 285 and as strong as you are and stuff like that. But also, again, by improving digestion, because when you have so much visceral fats and everything is always clogged everywhere, your digestion is shit. Yeah. So you might not get nearly as much protein in your system as you think you are, technically. Food ingested is not the same as food digested, right? So let's talk about digestion, right? So how do we improve digestion? So for example, we improve digestion by having protein at night when I'm the most capable of digesting, not during the day. I improve my digestion by making sure smell is involved, like the food tastes great, smells great, strong taste, stuff like that will actually help the digestion. Not eating while being on the phone, while being stressed out, or stuff like that, chewing your food, all those things matter, right? And so, but can we use, for example, carbs to help digestion? And yes, we can. So the key with people like carbs, like starches, like potatoes, rice, oatmeal, stuff like that, and that's fine. But there's a way to make it actually very beneficial for your digestion. What you do is you cook, let's take potatoes, right? You cook potatoes, you let them cool down. Maybe you reheat them, let them cool down again. What you're creating is you're creating a lot of starch-resistant fiber. Technically, it's resistant starch fibers, but it's harder for me to say with a French accent, so I'm going to say starch-resistant fibers. I'm mixing, but it's easier for me to say.
We get to make up our own words here. I don't know.
Totally, I do. And that's all because of the French accent. So I do whatever the fuck I want. So you create more starch-resistant fibers. What does that do? That means the potatoes get technically digested less. So it comes more as a block straight into the colon. And those fibers are actually what feeds the good gut flora the best. Mm-hmm. So you can actually bring those good fibers to the gut flora and create a better gut flora, which is, if you've listened to the podcast, extremely important, as it is a seat of behavior. By eating the starch food like potatoes, rice, or oatmeal cold.
And so heated and then cold.
Heated and then cooked. Okay. And then cold. Okay. So that's, you can do cooked and cold, but if you reheat and cold, it's even better. But you can do cooked and cold.
What's your Heinz ketchup policy?
No.
Fuck. All right, I'm out.
So, you know what's very interesting is I was talking to Rich about it, who's going to do a cooking show for all of us. And he was saying that when they were doing potatoes at the Mirage, right, they would cook the potatoes, halfway through, take them out, put them into ice water to stress the fuck out of them, and then finish cooking them. I've been trying that, and he wasn't kidding. It actually works. And they always did it for digestion. They just knew. There's many cultures that have done that. You know, fries are cooked twice.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So there's many cultures that have been doing that because they know it turns the potato, it's better digested. It tastes better, it's better digested because you're creating the resistant starch fibers. So if you want carbs, like let's say instead of doing training right before you train, you could take potatoes, halfway through, put them into ice water until they're cold, finish cooking them, right? Heat them, cool them down, but you're gonna have to eat them cold.
Yeah.
And then you eat that, and then you can go train, which means basically the glycemic index of the potatoes goes down tremendously, and you technically gonna digest less, you're gonna digest more, but it's gonna be digested more by the colon, less by the intestines and all that stuff. And so it actually works better as an overall source of carbs. And so sugar being bad, sorry. Sugar isn't good.
This would be easier if you would come up with a way to do this that was like rice or...
Right. No, but we can do it with rice.
You know what I mean?
But cold.
But that's it. It is interesting to see what other things can fall.
No, we can do it in rice. So you cook the rice, right? And you let it cool down. Heat it up, cool down again, and so sushi, maybe that's why. Except sushi, but not with the protein. Okay. Which, by the way, way back in the day, in Japan, the amount of fish was very, very small with the rice. And fish is like salmon, stuff like that, it's the easiest source of protein to digest. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the Japanese culture, they actually have very, very little food, so they had very little protein. Anyway, but so the key is have your starch cold. Okay. It will actually be far better for the digestion.
Like right before training.
Right before training. Yeah. So I've been testing some. So that's the protocol, the way we all been doing it. As usual, I've been testing something different, and I'm gonna explain what I've been doing. But so to recap, that means that you get carbs when you train or right before. Right, a good source of carbs could be, for example, the cold potatoes, the cold rice, or stuff like that right before, and then you go train. Not too much, so you don't crash. But because again, if you have a lot of carbs like that the fact that it's cold also has the lower glycemic index, which means you will get less of an insulin spike, which means you'll crash less.
Yeah.
Because when you have the insulin spike, you get the brain serotonin, and it levels you off.
And you may not waste that quote unquote energy, or at least that shift in state when you're not training either.
Right, exactly.
If you eat something higher in the index and then an hour you're finally training, an hour later
you'll crash. So you'll get to your training like this and it'll be a horrible session. So by doing it cold like that, you can have it like 30 minutes before and go. Or you can have the stuff that I was using, like the old Vitargo or whatever, which is sweet potato based, like while you train or stuff like that. Sugar, it's a whole different ballgame. It acts as a stimulant I would tell you sugar and caffeine stimulants have to go away. Like that's a conversation for another podcast, but we talked about it on the No Fix November. Sugar and caffeine has to go away. Sorry, it's just the way.
Also, I think I want to get back to circadian rhythms real quick, because one of the things that I've noticed is that I like to use just my understanding of the circadian rhythms as a way to limit the damage that I do on, like, say, a cheat day, something like that, right? There's two things I've noticed. One is cheat days with just overall with the protocol have to be fewer, less often.
You're more sensitive.
Well, exactly. And I think maybe you can get away with it, but after a certain point, if you go and have it was a couple weeks ago we had like fucking pizza and lasagna and it was fucking good. But then like the next day I'm just in a haze. My sleep was trash. Also then kind of because of that, I don't think I got actually enough protein in, so then I was under recovered, just felt smashed, you know.
I can't anymore.
And then between that and then like drinking alcohol. So what I figured is I just try to not jam up the circadian rhythms first. I try to keep that, because if you're gonna have, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with a person having some beers in their life. However, if you're trying to be as big, strong, or jacked or healthy as possible, you probably should be doing less of that, right? But when you're going to do it, so for me, it was if I'm going to have some beers, I just prefer now, if I'm going to do it, in the afternoon, from like 1 or 2 to 3 or 4.
Right.
And then I can go home. Exactly. You're out and about. It's nice. It's sunny.
If you're out. Yeah. Because again, out is a sympathetic stuff. So I'm all for it if you're out.
And then but the reason, so I don't like drinking really in the evening just because it just completely destroys my sleep. And it'll ruin my whole next day.
You know that circadian rhythm, I was reading a paper on that, even decide how you process stuff.
Yeah.
Glucose versus this. The circadian rhythm do that. So I bet you if you have like, you know, protein during the day and protein at night, even if you were able to, you can't, but even if you were able to digest it the same way, I bet you your body would still process it differently because of the light, for example. So having protein when the light is on versus when the light is off is not the same. There's a number of things that have been linked to circadian rhythm where their impact is much greater on us than we are willing to admit.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it, is to just understand that, all right, that is a thread that's going to run through this whole thing. Meaning like anytime you're actually deviating from that, you're already creating problems.
Yes.
So
signals are being mixed.
Yeah.
So your body doesn't understand what you're doing. Yeah. When your body doesn't understand what you're doing, the prediction that it's making starts to be off versus the observation. That creates another podcast we're making called somatic errors. And out of that alone, that's where anxiety, depression comes from and everything. So nutrition can have tremendous impact on anxiety because of the mix of signals.
Yeah.
That alone creates what is called somatic errors. Sorry, that's the name. And again, I'll explain what it is. It's very simply, it's the difference between the predicted body state versus the actual body state. What you think your body is going to be like versus what your body ends up being like. That difference is called a somatic error. When it becomes big, it leads to avoidance because basically the whole system freaks out, and that's where anxiety is.
Yeah.
So mixing up the signals like that could give you anxiety, which means like you have a beer at night without doing anything with it. I mean, and then you're like, and then so your sleep is fucked up. So next day you're like, oh, I feel like shit. And then suddenly your signals are all over the place, and here comes anxiety, here comes all that stuff. So yeah, the circadian rhythm there's a circumstance you're victim of.
Yes.
That one you have to follow.
That's the thing that I learned when we went to California. I was like, I just cannot get out from under the thumb of that thing.
Yes.
Fuck.
Hard.
But I do think the reason that people lean so heavily on caffeine and sugar often is because you're like in violation of that first law.
I agree completely. And they go like, well, I want energy now. Yeah, but that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And by the way, you want energy now? Move around.
Yeah.
Energy is lactate. You need to move around. You don't get to go on your iPad to check on Instagram and go, I want energy now, and get like, I was saying that at the coffee shop yesterday, and get a fucking chocolate cake and one of those things with sugar and milk and all the shit just to check Instagram for an hour.
Yeah.
No, you don't get to do that. I know, sorry, you don't get to do that. That's not how this works. That's what they're trying to do. I'm like, no, that's not what energy is. Energy is lactate, is moving, is you want to have that, you're going to have to fuck yourself up for an hour to get all that sugar out and burn it in here. Yeah. You don't get to have that energy. That's by the way, that's not what the sugar is for. Not that you should have sugar, but I mean, like that energy to check Instagram for an hour, oh, fuck me, go find it yourself. I mean, I'm sorry, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where anxiety can come from and all that stuff. So the importance of circadian rhythm is tremendous. So back to, on top of that, so you have the protein at night, you have the fats during the day, and carbs before you train. So why fats during the day and not more carbs? Because now we're in the brain networks, there's three. Again, we're going to do a podcast about it, but real quick, the 3 are one. You have the default network, which is on the parasympathetic side. That's where also the part of the I and the me lives, but basically that's a huge part of your sense of self. That's what happens at night.
Yeah.
During the day, you're in what is called the attention network, the task positive network.
Yeah.
Right? 2 of them, there's a silent network, the executive network. Executive network is fuck it, do stuff.
That's pure action, right?
Pure action.
That's not even thought action. That's kind of
It's pure action. That's because you've already done your thinking.
Well, that was kind of described to me when I had looked into it. It almost seemed like that is more. It is truly like I don't want to sound too extreme, but it is more like survival and flight than the other.
Yes.
Just if I were to put it in.
Right, because flight is a misnomer in many cases. That's the problem. It's where you've done the thinking, and now it's time to just do stuff. For example, the bear is coming. You can't ponder the dichotomy of good and evil within human nature while the bear is coming at you, right? You can't namaste the bear away. Namaste would be full default network. Why? There's a place for everything. Sometimes you need to fuck shit up. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, if you're going to do a sled sprint or the harness 100 feet to literally complete exhaustion, I can't have you thinking about how bad it's going to be. I can't have you thinking about yourself. I wonder what I should do with my girlfriend. This is not the moment for that conversation. This is a moment for lose yourself, fucking do stuff, right? Yeah. So in that sense, flight, but not in the sense there's good flight, bad flight. That's a bit the problem with the flight as a misnomer. Yeah. It's in the sense of pure action.
Yeah, I always kind of.
You've done the thinking.
Yeah, I always just viewed it as similar to that, like you've done the thing, but you get to the point where whatever is going to be done automatically is done, and now the only concern is survival. Well, that is still actually
right, so
some
let's do it that way. You've decided to do bungee jumping.
Yeah.
Right. You get to and you start to go, I don't want to do this anymore. Now you're in the default network.
Yeah.
And you go and you start to think about, okay, but this is going to be fun, think about after. Now you're in the silence network, you're trying to find the patterns. And then eventually to jump, you need to go into the executive network, which is now, do I want to do this? No, at that moment you don't.
Yeah.
But that's not the point. Or someone pushes you. But that's.
So carbs are still useful in that environment then, in the executive?
More executive. So, and then you get into the salience, which is data gathering, figuring.
I think was
cognition,
like the best
exactly. Right.
Thing
Cognition. Yeah. And that's where fat comes in. And we've seen that from keto diet that improves cognition. Yeah. That's why, because you're actually into a specific network of the brain that is designed for pattern recognition, so for cognition. Mm-hmm. And fats are just better for that. Yeah. But so after that, there's place between the two. So for example,
like in the executive network, do you think you still have a bit of an issue then of, you still cannot put food in front of behavior either? No. As in, like, the carbs can be fuel generally for that state, or if they're going to be used, that's when they should be used. But you really don't want to go down that road of like, action means carbs all the time.
Right. And so, by example, I explained to you also what if you have carbs, you're going to have a problem reading.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, for example, writing and reading are not the same. Reading, in the sense of absorbing knowledge, that would be the salience network. Mm-hmm. Writing is you're doing stuff. Like if you're copying, if you're taking notes, that's more toward the executive network.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because it's hard to write and absorb at the same time. You can, but that's why the networks are not quite that.
Yeah.
It's never
that same.
It's never 0 or 100.
So it really is more. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's not a binary, but that's how it works. But you're still in the attention part, so you still need fuel to do that. So to read or write, you're going to need carbs and fats. Right. So if you look at it as a dial, not as a 0 or 1. Yeah. The more you're on the executive network, the more you go toward carbs. The more, let's say you want to write, the more you go toward carbs. The more you want to read and absorb, the more you go toward fats. Now, understand that there's a gradient in carbs as well. If I get my potatoes with the, like the starch-resistant fibers and everything, I might be able to write emails, do work or whatever. But if I get sugar, I'm way out there, and now I just need to jump off the fucking roof.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's a gradient in that. So in order to test that, based on circadian rhythm, I was like, all right, let me try something. So my idea was, first part of the day is more executive network. I do stuff. I write whatever, because I'm doing stuff on neuroscience, so I'm like not reading, but like writing, because I need to write certain things. I can do stuff like answering you guys, doing the stuff on Kajabi, so more like stuff that requires less of my capacity to absorb knowledge, like more stuff. And so that being morning, then I go train and just fuck shit up, right? That would be the best moment to do it would be morning, because I just slept, my energy is at the highest. So I was like, all right, let me see if I can fuel that. So what I've been doing is I've been trying to have the cold potatoes done, cooked the way I said, right? First thing in the morning in order to fuel that, to fuel for what's coming. And so a little bit, and then that has worked. And then after that, I train. And then once I'm done, I come back. After I get all my water, I switch to the silence network, because now it's usually around noon, 1 o'clock, when usually you have that dip. I start to crash, right? That's when I get the fat. So I get my avocado, feta cheese, all the stuff. And cheese, so huge amount of fat. And then that takes me through the silence network. And then I get to 7 o'clock, nighttime. And then I get my protein to switch to default network the rest of the night. And then it makes me crash. And that has worked extremely well for me, and very interestingly made me lose a lot of water weight as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fairly lean already, but now I'm even getting leaner because of that. But my training sessions have gone extremely well, and also because the fact that after I get my fat, I feel so good.
Yeah.
Because I am where I belong, which is a silent network. Right? This is where my entire being is designed to be, is a silent network. So, but you have to understand that based on circadian rhythm, I've changed my day. I don't especially like training in the morning, but I do it because I would be, okay, let me try what I do. So I've used nutrition and training. I've changed my nutrition training right now to test based on the circadian rhythm, where I was like, and the brain network. So I'm like, all right, executive network first, which means I write, I do the shit that I have to do. On my cold potatoes, I train. Then second meal is my lunch, which is after I train, which is the fats that feeds my silent network. I get my chai latte, who is basically around 3-4 at the coffee shop. And then at that time I can read. So it's not time to write anymore.
Gotcha.
Now it's time to read, and that's when I read my neuroscience, and then look at the screen like this for fucking 3 hours reading the stuff that I send you, right? But now I'm in the silent network. And then at night I get my protein, and then I'm done with all this, which means I don't work again, and now it's pure default mode network. That's socialization. I talk to Yaya, so I might text you guys, but I'm done with work. So I've changed my entire day to make my signals as clear as possible. And I'm still at 104, 105 kilos, but leaner.
Yeah.
And my stomach, interestingly, is reducing its size. That's for another podcast, but there's an entire thing with the right anterior insula checking on the distension of the stomach. So there's an entire thing there that is fascinating, because that leads back to bodybuilders and all that stuff. Anyway, so
well, I know for sure too, for people there, we'll have for sure a whole episode on the network.
Yes, one or two.
For sure on the right anterior insula and a lot of that stuff.
That'll be
probably be a part of that one.
Part of interoception.
Yeah, and then
probably 2 episodes between interoception and the networks.
Yeah, and then we've got Julien's After Hours podcast coming up.
He has to come up. We have to do that one.
I did some looking, and I think what I can tell for sure is I think we have like 6 episodes pretty much listed out that are just going to be the heat. So.
Yeah, it should be good. Yeah. We have to do After Hours. I got a lot of messages asking for it.
So. Yep. So, no, it'll be really good. Is there anything on this we want to get out before we are out of time?
So,
covered the protein, the carbs,
Well, I think that's... what questions did we have on that? So the carbs...
I wanted to wait on the questions until we can just do
the Q&A. Right, okay. Because we're going to do a Q&A. No, I believe it's... So to recap, basically, it's fat and carbs during the day, and it's protein at night. When to have the fats, technically, is throughout the day. Have carbs when you train, for now. Me, since I've been on it for 2 years, I am testing the idea of having my cold potatoes in the morning, but that's it. That's all I eat, right?
Yeah.
Is that? Then I have, and then
it's not cold potatoes and bacon and eggs and some cheese.
No, it's just cold potatoes. That's it, right? And then I get, I get all my executive network stuff, so all the stuff that needs to be done, which means emails, specific type of work, training, all that stuff before I get my second meal, usually around 1, which is my avocado, feta cheese, goat cheese, some olive oil, so a huge fat bomb basically. That leads me to like 3-4. We usually have my chai latte at the coffee shop because I spend my entire afternoon reading neuroscience, absorbing knowledge. And then I have dinner around 6. I've noticed that I can eat a lot more protein at 6, 7 than I do 8, 9.
Yeah.
So now I've moved my dinner toward between 6 and 7 where I eat as much protein as I can. And usually before I go to bed around 10, I have yogurt with a lot of casein protein. The only problem with the casein protein is it tastes like chocolate, so it's a sweet taste. Yeah. So that might be an issue. Yeah. So I'll have to look into it. But this is the protocol for me right now, and it works extremely well. For you guys, I would still say, especially if you've been on the protocol for a year, you can try different things. Yeah. But when you first come in, I would say for the first 6 months of the protocol, in order to get very clear signals, it would be fast during the day, carbs only when you're training, protein at night.
Yeah.
Veggies everywhere, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Veggies everywhere. But promote your digestion, right?
Digestion and sleep is where
digestion and sleep is the main key. Yeah. And then again, we're going to make the podcast on the networks, but understand that if you have mixed signals, it will directly lead to anxiety for reasons that are rooted in technically cognitive neuroscience. Yeah. That will go into it. So is that clear enough?
I think so.
Right?
Well, and we wanted to do this one to build upon the other stuff anyway. So I think now
but also to underline like the carbs as crude oil, not refined gasoline.
Plus, it was important to introduce the lactate stuff into kind of where that fits with the nutrition.
But that's so important, right? Yeah. If you understand that the key is lactate, then you can stop fantasizing so much about glucose, because everybody is about glucose. No, glucose is the fuel in a rested state when you're in freeze or, actually in flight as well, even though it's more cortisol and everything. Anyway, but the second you start moving, that you're in a little bit of, for example, the cellulite network, which is the whole day, right? Then glucose is not the fuel, lactate is the fuel. Yeah. Right, so you need glucose as a precursor, but therefore you don't, again, it's very important to understand that glucose is not the fuel, it's just the crude oil. And then from there, it needs to be refined properly and then used properly. And then you still have to fucking drive the car correctly. Yeah. So
and you still need to go in from building your VO2 max to VLA max to have the ability to use.
And all that stuff.
There is a lot there.
And clear signals so that you know where you are. Remember, it always comes down to prediction versus observation. So, by the way, that means you need to make a clear prediction, but that means you also need to be connected with your body to get the proper observation. Right? And when you fuck up with the nutrition, what you're cutting yourself from is observation from your body. If you have carbs all the time, stimulants like sugar and caffeine, it basically numbs you from the response from your body. So that means that you have nothing to bounce the prediction against. Yeah. What happens is you start to over-mentalize everything. That increases the somatic error, gives you more anxiety. That leads to depression.
Yeah.
So all that stuff is linked. There's no free lunch on this one.
No.
Everything is linked together.
Well, I think what you'll see from these two is we're gonna, as we roll out through these other networks, we're probably gonna retouch on some of the nutrition as it ties in anyway. So you'll see kind of these evolving.
Cephalic phase insulin response is a very good example of you making a prediction.
Yeah.
People need to understand that about the human body, about life in general. Otherwise, they are being sold a victimhood mentality.
Yeah.
But again, I cannot understate how much the society we're in right now is manipulating people to give them what they want. It's not give them what they want. It's they're just feeding a certain part that is very dangerous to feed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Speaking of people that are dangerous to feed.
Yeah, there you go. So
the podcast support page. I figured that's a perfect
let's
segue.
Talk about this. Yeah, let's talk about this.
Speaking of feeding dangerous people, if you want to support the podcast, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, right? We always would prefer you just continue via your education with seminars, with something like that, if available. Any of our online programs are great.
An extra $20.
But if you just want to support the podcast for the sake of the podcast, we don't do premium content. We may just throw bones that way somehow. But for us now, we just have it set up at podcast.strongfit.com. There you can choose one-time donations or one of 3 subscriptions.
People have been donating.
Ballers.
Thank you.
It's been really
thank
great.
you.
So
because you're helping us pay for his plane tickets and everything until he's moving to Amsterdam. So then we'll have the capacity to do more videos and more stuff.
So as we get to this next phase, like those of you that have been supporting us, we just want to say how much we appreciate it.
Yep.
And if you're just watching and can't support it, we still appreciate you watching.
No, but it's cool because even if it's $5, it's the effort you're making toward saying like, hey, I like what you do. It's cool.
And there are things in my little things like that where like getting the little when we get a ding through the support page, I'll get like an email. When I see those, it's probably the happiest I've ever got from a transaction on any business I've ever had, except for I remember when we first started Massonomics and we would get like someone from like Nebraska would order a shirt, and we would all four of us who own the company, we'd message each other. You know this guy? You know this guy? I don't know this guy. Fuck yeah, we did. Like we sold the shirt to somebody who's not a friend.
That's how it feels like. Even the $5, you go like, okay, that's cool.
And for me, it's a thing where I like that it just kind of transcends capitalism. It is simply this is thing
because you don't have to pay
out,
for it. Yep.
And
we're going to do it anyway,
and we'll do it anyways, no matter what. But we appreciate it. It's also so you guys know going forward. I mean, after you'll see about a few weeks or a month's worth of episodes from this trip. But then we'll be able to hit it pretty hard. Yeah. Because then we'll be here. We plan on, we may be going at least another 2 episodes a month in addition, maybe another 4. But we'll be doing more Q&A stuff.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to start the Q&As. Yeah. We'll do most likely 2 a month, at least one no matter what. Yeah. Probably 2 a month. We'll have, my goal is to have 2 Q&As a month and 6, so 8 episodes total per month with 2 Q&As. Yeah. So 6 regular podcasts, 2 Q&As, and to have more episodes about movement. Yeah. So I'll have still my stuff because I won't let go. So will probably be 3 of my stuff, 3 pure movement like StrongFit system, and 2 Q&As. That's my goal anyway.
And that structure is coming from, there's a few reasons why that structure is that way, right? So right now what we have is this stuff that Julien's moving forward on is moving forward very quickly. Yeah. So instead of just doing 4 episodes and having 3 of them be on that and 1 on movement, we're just going to make room so Julien can go, and then we can still also have the movement subjects here. Yeah. And the Q&A is because I just think sometimes we don't understand where we miss in communication, so it's always good to get engagement and clear up.
Yeah, and I don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
That's really the problem, is sometimes I'm surprised at that. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's because because if you're missing a critical piece of information, then some of the stuff doesn't make sense. Yeah. And so people, after a long conversation, eventually I get to the point where I was like, okay, so that's what you didn't understand. All right, so let's talk about that.
Well, it's one of the things we talk. So the Q&As are important for us because we talked to David about this, who's helping us with kind of how we are laying out and presenting information to people in the right order, if you will. And we have this, what did he call it? I don't know.
The expert bias.
Expert bias, so Julien has what's called the expert bias, and when you learn things the way Julien learns, which is just this shit fast, all the time,
I forget.
Well, he just expects you to do the same thing to learn those things. And Julien doesn't get that that's not how it works.
Yeah, I'm like, what are you all waiting for? No, but by the way, and there's stuff that I've forgotten more about movement that most people know. So there's stuff where I was like, oh, right, sure, that one. Even stuff I came up with, I forget. Yeah. Because I'm, on the other stuff. And so sometimes I assume that everybody knows the rest. Yeah. I know it's stupid, but I can't stop. I move forward fast. So in my mind, it's like, but that's fucking last year, man. Yeah. It's like, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing podcasts on that. So we're going to be better. So now that we're both going to be in Amsterdam close to each other, we're going to have a room just for the podcast. I'm very excited. Yeah. We're going to be able to make it the way we want. And then we can make more videos, because I absolutely love the podcast. See, like even the after hour one, I had more.
We're just going to end up with a whole video series of those.
I have more messages about that one than any of the other ones. Yeah. Because you haven't heard part 2. That's why. That's when it gets fun. But anyway, so the podcast for me has been one of those extremely enjoyable things. So I want to do more. That way we can share even more with people. But I want also not get pigeonholed into only what I like, so do more stuff about movement. Yeah. So that's what the structure.
So if you have questions for the podcast, it's the best way to get us to go in depth and talk about it on the podcast would be if you're going to look in, if you're in iTunes or wherever you're listening, in the description, I should have that link there. Or if you're on YouTube, there will be a link for questions for the podcast. Also, that link is on the podcast support page at podcast.strongfit.com.
And you'll be on Instagram.
I think that's everything else. And on Instagram. But you can find equipment, strongfitequipment.com, seminars and everything at strongfit.com. We have some super awesome, really nice shit coming down the pipe pretty soon. I'm just going to say 2 words, StrongFit Library.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that. I thought you meant the t-shirt and everything, but yeah, not StrongFit Library, yeah.
God damn, Julien, I've been working for fucking months on this project. You're like, oh, that
is true. Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. Tyler has been, and by the way, that's not me, that's all Tyler. He's been building a really cool stuff. So when he says we, he means him.
There's been a lot of us, actually, truthfully. There's been...
Yeah, but you started the whole thing.
Yeah.
No, let's give credit where credit is due. You started the whole thing. It was his idea. He put it together, and I was like, that's a good idea. Yeah. And so he's been building a StrongFit library and a searchable one.
Yeah, and so for me, too, that's become as an extension of what I viewed what I wanted to do with the podcast was everything Julien does and goes forward. I needed somewhere, things need to get nailed down behind him. Like, does everyone see? And so I thought the podcast was the thing I could do that would start. And that seems to be going well and moving along. Problem is, like anything, the information you're gathering for the podcast is creating more work than it is.
It's a divergent mentality, man. Yeah.
So it's been, now I'm just taking that as an extension of what I'm doing with the podcast, which, all right, let's just get everything. It needs to be somewhere that's forever, and we can curate it over time until it's good.
And we can just add, because there's so much, the number of papers I read is exponentially greater.
Yeah.
So I go faster on this, not slower, which even me, I'm like, fuck.
So eventually you'll have everything from every piece of video content sorted. Every video article will have lots of other contributors up there. Every study will be sorted. Anything that Julien reads and makes notes on or wants to have, we're going to file it all into this archive and get it all set. It will be really, really sweet. We're going to start adding some things like case studies in there where we'll put together a little do this, record this. And you can just go and I'm going to do this little experiment for 8 weeks and it's all spelled out for you.
Right.
With constraints and everything.
Yeah, because I think people don't understand that we still experiment so much on the stuff. That's why I'm trying the nutrition stuff now, because I was like, let's see if it works.
Yeah, like with the potato stuff that Julien was talking about, when he's saying it, I'm hearing it and I'm like, well, are we doing carbs again? Is this information or is this an experiment? Yeah, where are we at with it? And so that's always the process. So I think you can
always
see that
make a hypothesis first, and then I have to test it.
Yeah.
Right. So the hypothesis was based on the stuff. I was like, all right, let's see. And I wanted to feed the gut flora. So far it's working, but it's been a week.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 days max. So right now it's way too early for me to tell you if it's a good idea or not.
Yeah.
If you've been on the protocol for a year, you want to try, just message me and I'll explain. But it's basically exactly what I said.
Yeah.
But it requires making your day, organizing your day the way I did. That's the problem that people are going to fuck up. Yeah. If you have a different day, it won't work.
Yeah.
And if you try to do fat first, carbs after, I'm not sure it would work.
Yeah, I don't know either. That's
I don't know either.
I haven't considered.
Yeah,
and so with this, I haven't even jumped on the potatoes or carbs thing with this because
we don't know yet.
I've heard it from Julien, and also I just don't feel like messing up the way I buy groceries. I got like 2 weeks left in Austria. I'm just
not for now. But the rest we'll talk about it in the network.
Exactly. But you can find Julien at StrongFit1 on Instagram. I'm Tyler F. and Stone, Richard's Rare Barracuda. Everything else you can find, I think, within there. I don't know. Find us on Instagram, you'll find the rest. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you next week.